Cyber criminals, they no longer receive a slap on the wrist like they used to, or like some used to. No, sir. Law enforcement is out for blood. Ever since the first computers were created, people have used them for less than reputable reasons. And in today's world, it seems that every man, woman, and child is a potential cyber criminal. Piracy, identity theft, and computer tampering are at an all-time high, leading many to believe that nobody is worried by the threat of lawsuits or jail time. Recently, a Michigan man was caught selling $1 million worth of copywritten software and sentenced to only 10 months and a fine, while a 17-year-old could face up to 100 years in prison for tampering with America Online's main servers. Are punishments for cybercrime too harsh, or does there need to be a greater deterrent? Access granted, it's The Loop. I've formatted my hard drive 4 times. I'm ready for this discussion. My guest tonight from Las Vegas, security consultant and author of The Art of Deception, Mr. Kevin Mitnick joins us, and from Pittsburgh, former cybercrime prosecutor, professor, and owner of consulting firm Trace Evidence, Joe Schwerha. Gentlemen, welcome to The Loop. We were talking about Attorney General Alberto Gonzales. He's pressing Congress to enact the Intellectual Property Protection Act of 2007. Now, this piece of legislation would increase criminal penalties for copyright infringement. We're talking bigger fines, longer sentences, and the toughest punishment under the bill would actually be prison in life for anyone who used pirated software. I mean, Kevin, you tell me, does a bootleg copy of Photoshop really warrant a life sentence, or is this bill is a bit excessive?
Yeah, I of course, that would be draconian. But when I read the information on the internet, it had to do with if a death or a bodily injury was caused by a copyright infringement. But I can't imagine a death or bodily injury being caused by some sort of copyright infringement.
A record exec could have a heart attack looking at all the royalties he's losing from his kids that are cracking iTunes DRM, though. That is possible.
Well, Gonzales had some sort of analogy, and what that analogy was is if a medical or a doctor or a hospital purchased some software that was counterfeit and it was used to do some sort of heart surgery and then a patient died, that would be a death caused by copyright infringement. But
Kevin, do you really think that's going to be prosecuted, though? I mean, I don't think that they're going to prosecute a life imprisonment offense for somebody who's just in a hospital and has copyrighted software that's illegal, pirated software. I think what you're really dealing with is, somebody who hacks into a system, maybe changes the medical formulations that are given to a particular patient, and then they die. I mean, I think that's probably, something that's more along the lines that they're possibly operating with, pirated software, and then that occurs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I actually read Alberto Gonzales' quote, and his analogy was a hospital operating on a patient using counterfeited software. The patient dies, that the counterfeiter should be subject to life imprisonment. So I think that's crazy.
I agree. You and I agree with you on that. I mean, I think if someone, just because they're using pirated software, but it doesn't cause any death, it would be, it would not be something that you'd get life imprisonment.
But Joe, let me ask you from our viewers' perspective, because chances are they're not running any hospitals. They might just be running a bootleg copy of Windows Millennium that they have from 5 years ago. I mean, should they be worried about these new laws?
I don't know if it applies to traffickers. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, that's okay. It's just, I think that people should be concerned about these copyright law amendments. Some of the penalties involved with this new proposal by Gonzales, and it's just a proposal. I mean, he's writing saying these are our recommendations as to how law should be amended. They are in depth, and they would affect everyday, people in terms of, how they use copyrighted material. In general, people, I think, are quite offended at how far copyright law has gone towards infringing upon everyday usage.
Kevin, do you think cybercrime punishment, I mean, I'll ask you flat out, is it too harsh? And I'm not talking for major cases. I'm talking for, when a 15-year-old girl gets a lawsuit because she downloaded a Britney Spears track off Kazaa. I mean, is it just too much?
Well, I think that's civil. I don't think that's criminal. It really depends on what the perpetrator has done, what type of harms have been caused, and that should be commensurate with the punishment, be it a fine or imprisonment.
Now, Joe, this is a bit of a loaded question, I'll admit. But, I mean, laws like this, aren't they intended to catch real criminals, working in major crime rings and not the teenage girl next door?
Yeah, I think what you have to really worry about here is that people are dealing with copyright infringement, and there's both civil and criminal aspects of that, and forgetting about some of the other cybercrimes that a lot of the cybercrime laws are meant to prevent. I mean, God forbid somebody is possessing child pornography. If you look at, what's out there and how people are really being prosecuted for possession of child pornography, I mean, I would suggest that people are not being prosecuted nearly enough. Frankly, if you go out there, I'd love to see the statistics of how much people could actually really be in prison for. That is the number of counts in a typical criminal complaint versus what they're actually sentenced to later. I think you'd see that people are vastly being under-prosecuted in those regards.
And what I've seen about copyright infringement, through my clients and through my past dealings working as an employee for corporate America, I haven't seen one of my past employers in corporate America not do copyright infringement. They'll buy one copy of a piece of software and use it on multiple machines. It's common. People do it all the time. I'm not saying it's right, moral, and ethical, but I wonder how many people will be subject to fines and imprisonment over this.
Well, let me ask you about this 17-year-old that was charged with 4 computer felonies. I mean, he was hacking into AOL servers, and now they're saying that he might actually get 101 years in jail.
Well, that's not realistic. That's what they call the statutory max. Judges have to abide by the U.S. federal sentencing guidelines. And of course, what they're doing is they're just adding up the counts and giving the statutory max, but that's not really realistic. That's all media FUD.
I agree with Kevin. That's never, ever going to happen.
All right, so Joe, I want to give you the final word then. A 17-year-old, he does a little hacking. He deserves punishment. I mean, he unleashed a Trojan, apparently, on AOL. What should happen to this kid?
Well, I think what you have to do is look at the harm that was caused, what his criminal background is, and assess the penalties in accordance with the guidelines. I mean, obviously, this person needs to be punished. He's probably going to be found guilty of several felonies, and that's going to hurt that person and follow them through the rest of their life. In addition, there could be criminal fines and or restitution that's going to be assessed against this individual that will, in fact, possibly ruin their life for quite some period of time. I think that's a pretty good punishment.
Sure. Hopefully not 101 years' time, though. I want to thank our guests here, Kevin and Joe. Thank you guys so much for keeping us in the loop.
Thank you very much.
Listen, there's no question that cybercrime is a problem that our society needs to deal with. I mean, it costs billions of dollars every year. But, when a 14-year-old kid steals a DVD from Best Buy, that kid doesn't get life in jail. Maybe gets a slap on the wrist and a stern wag of the finger. And the digital equivalent of that crime shouldn't be any different. This country's criminal justice system, it needs to realize who the real criminals are in the world. And knowing that college kids who crack DRM are locked up behind bars doesn't help me sleep any easier. Maybe it does you.
Attack of the Show, weeknights at 7, only on G4.